What's going on, everyone? My name is Joseph Reynolds at LowKickMMA. Today, joining me is the man with a degree, not just in any sort of business, but the business of kicking everyone's ass. Now 3-0 this year in Cage Warriors. Obviously, you've had a very impressive year coming off of it. How are you feeling, buddy?
Yeah, I'm feeling good. I'm feeling good. How are you?
Not too bad myself. Obviously, you do take a look in terms of 2022. It sets 2023, so it sets you up really well. Where are you looking to sort of be at the end of that year now that you are sort of getting really close to title contention?
Yeah, obviously this is the end of 2022. There'll be no more fights this year. Had 3 fights this year, 3 wins. And I look forward to the same next year, 3-4 wins, 3-4 fights. A step closer to, well, this year was a step closer to Cage Warriors Gold, and I think next year will be the year for me to get that strap, become the champion, and become a step closer to the UFC contract.
100%. When I spoke to yourself after your fight, Cage Warriors 146 at the show as well, you mentioned that you sort of had this year wrote down on a list in terms of what you wanted to achieve. In terms of looking at that list now and seeing everything that you did accomplish, do you feel as though you accomplished everything that you wanted to this year?
Yeah, so obviously in that message that I referred to, it was where I see myself next year, and then following that, it was actually where I see myself in 5 years, and yeah, just basically put it out there. And in 5 years' time, I said I see myself being in the UFC, being a black belt in jiu-jitsu, and something else. So obviously the black belt in jiu-jitsu is out with my control, but the UFC contract's not out with my control, and that's 4 years for me now. So if I think about, if I do the same thing from this point of time, this time next year, I see myself already being the Cage Warriors World Champion and ready to move on to the UFC. It depends how many times, obviously, it depends what time. It completely depends on timing, in terms of moving on from Cage Warriors, but I definitely see myself as being the Cage Warriors champion this time next year.
And as well, so knowing that you are obviously free fights is still a lot of fights, but being so close to the belt in itself, in a sense, like it's something that you can now easily see for yourself in the future. Looking at the names that have held that belt and the prestige behind the Cage Warriors belt, seeing where people have gone on and what they've gone on to do, what does that make you feel, sort of knowing what you can go on to progress with and having your name etched as down as a Cage Warriors world champion?
Yeah, so 100%. When you win the Cage Warriors World title at every weight division, I think that speaks volumes of the level that you're at. And everyone always talks when you get the belts about moving on like to the UFC. But I think when you win that belt, it shows that you're not just a European level fighter anymore, you're world class, because the division in like, for instance, the division in bantamweight or the division in across Cage Warriors or promotion is packed. Like you'll see a lot of guys when they do sign to UFC. I think what Cage Warriors have had like 115 to 120 athletes signed from the UFC. Like go and name me 5 bad athletes that go from the Cage Warriors to the UFC. They all go, more often than not, they go on a very good run after it, and it's because the level of fights that Cage Warriors produce are extremely high level, and you're arguably fighting like UFC level fighters, but just not at the UFC. You're fighting them in Cage Warriors. So to win that belt, to maybe then go defend that belt, you're proving yourself as the best fighter in Europe in your weight division, and you're ready to take that step forward. When I fought Kingsley Crawford, obviously it was the 20th anniversary show, 20-year anniversary show of Cage Warriors, and they had all the prestigious champions across, and then the O2 at the Indigo. And I remember waiting in Crawford come out because I came out first, and I seen all the champions up like McGregor, Paddy Pimblett, and Jack Shore, and I remember looking and going, I want my name in that. What I want to be up there, and that was like my last thought going into the fight. Literally just as he was walking out, I was like, I want my face up there. So 100%.
Yeah, and when you do see things like that, obviously, usually someone starts MMA, the goal's always to get into the UFC, but also, even before the UFC, you've still got a chance to make history or etch your name down into like MMA history. So does it also come with seeing the sort of positioning cages? Does it come with a lot of other goals as well that you soon see that you might not have thought that you had before, but then once it's in front of you, that it presents a new sort of goal?
No, of course. I think obviously the Cage Warriors belt has a prestigious element to it, but more so it would be a personal goal of mine. Like I always I've referred to this in the past, but when I first started, I said to my coach Dean Riley, I wanted to be the best fighter in the white world. I want to be a world champion in the UFC. That's what I said to him after training for a few weeks. Pretty deluded, right? You watch the UFC on TV and think, I could be good at that and I could be a world champion. And after he had his last fight, he gave me his Cage Warriors gloves, and he said to me, if you do want that, if you want to be the best fighter, you want to be a world champion, Cage Warriors is the promotion that you need to go through when you become a professional, and you need to become their champion, and then you'll be ready for the UFC. He said that from literally just starting. So what I've done is I put his gloves in my wee memory box. I'm quite sentimental. I put his gloves in my memory box, and I said, I'm going to wait until I turn professional, and I'm going to wear those gloves at every professional fight until Cage Warriors sign me. And I did. I wore that at my first 4 professional fights, and then Cage Warriors signed me. Now I've got 3 pairs of my own, and I'm a step closer to becoming the champion in Cage Warriors. So that was a goal of mine from the very, very start. I remember someone else asked me, like, as I was, say, coming through, for instance, I think I had 2 pro fights. They said, are you still kind of got your heart set in Cage Warriors, or would you open your eyes to other promotions? And I says, no, I've got my eyes set in Cage Warriors. I know my goals. I want to be, I want to go to Cage Warriors and I want to become the champion. The first time I went to Cage Warriors in my first fight against Sam Spencer, I was checking my weight, and the Cage Warriors belt was along on the table. And I remember saying to a few members of staff that I'm going to get that belt. And I said, I'm sorry, you must get that all the time off so many fighters, but I mean it. I said, I'm getting that. And so it's, as like I said, it's a personal goal for mine, for me to win that belt.
Yeah, and it almost seems like, obviously, with the list and then always having the goal of getting to Cage Warriors, that you've been able to manifest a lot of your goals and start to achieve them. But obviously, there's been obstacles along the way, I'm sure.
Of
But
course.
in terms of the obstacles that do come around for a fight, you spent a long time on the regional scene as an amateur. You reached #1 rankings. You're a champion in a few promotions as well. But in terms of the sort of hardships that a fighter faces before they get to these shows, or even when they're in these shows, what do they sort of look like? And the obstacles that people might not see from an MMA fighter's perspective.
At the end of the day, like fighters, like if I speak for myself, I'm a human being that has distractions every single day. I remember like every fight has its own different story. Whether it's sometimes you go in no distractions whatsoever, and then you go into other fights where you've got loads of personal things going on in the background. I don't want to go too much into my personal life, but there's definitely been fights where people around me have passed away very, very close to me, and I've essentially used the fight camp as like a coping mechanism in the fight. I remember sometimes like there's been a few fights where I've basically like been either extremely emotional after or extremely emotional beforehand, and it's just basically like all my emotions have went out because I've bottled up everything in the lead up to the fight. And then flip that on the other side, like before I had my Cage Warriors debut, my best friend got married 3 weeks before the fight. So although that's not that's not a traumatic event, that's probably one of the proudest moments of my life. I was the best man to his wedding, but that's a major distraction in the lead up to a fight. Sam Spencer never had that distraction 3 weeks before. So like in terms of the hardships, like we as fighters, we've got a personal life, and almost like you see the amount of like weddings or funerals or family events or that you'll probably miss as a fighter, and the amount of stress and trauma that's probably come to your life on a daily basis, and we just kind of have to put them to the side and focus on the fight, because the fight's how we make money, the fight's how we live our life. However, that's like from my point of view, but it would be completely different from maybe someone who has kids. They're a parent, maybe that's right, they're a grandkid. So like I said, we're just human beings that come across problems every single day of our life. But maybe people behind the scenes don't really see that.
Yeah, 100%. And then also to just now take a look at the sport as well. Obviously, in the UK, since when you made your first fight as an amateur, obviously the progression of the sport in the UK and Scotland especially, it's
Yeah.
been an extreme high amount. And to sort of be a part of that and see the come up of the sport in the UK and Scotland, what's that been like to sort of see the progression from where it was to where it is now?
Yeah, 100%. Like I think when I first started, I'm just going to use Stevie Ray as an example. When I first started, I think Stevie Ray definitely wasn't in the UFC. When I first started, he was in Cage Warriors or Bama. And then maybe 7 years later, he's fighting for $1 million and fighting for a world championship. And the amount of fighters not only do we have signed to Cage Warriors or other shows, Bellator, I think, again, just going by today's interview, I think Mark Ewan's fighting in Paris on Thursday. the amount of fighters that fought around the world, like in Africa and EFC, the UFC, Bellator, Cage Warriors, high level professional shows, like world class in shows. So like I said, like Scottish MMA is definitely on the rise. And then you see like the I can't even think of the word, but the way they had like the Four Nations tournament in Scotland had a team from, and it wasn't just like, maybe back in the day it would be predominantly from like the Dinky Ninja Fight team, the Grip House higher level, but now it's from gyms all across the board on a national level, and it's very good to see.
100%. And then you mentioned there with the Four Nations, obviously, even at an amateur level now, like some of the Scottish fighters, Sean Clancy Jr., he comes to mind very quickly. Obviously, he's at the top of his division. And
Kinley Law as well, he got like what fight of the tournament?
I believe he did, yeah.
Yeah.
Just sort of seeing these success and sort of being a part of their journey as well as progressing on your own. I'm sure there's fighters now that will be in a similar position to what you was at one stage, or that you're seeing at an amateur. Being a part of their journeys and seeing them progress at the same time as yourself, what's that sort of like looking in?
No, it's definitely good. Like I said, as a nation, obviously on a national level, you're going to get all these Scottish gyms fighting against each other, but we all know like one another. But then when you maybe go to like the more elite level in terms of like in the professional level, I think from a nation we should start. At the national level and the local shows, it's going to be difficult not to fight against one another. But that's just part of the sport. That's just part of us all growing together, and essentially we're doing that journey together by fighting each other. But then again, when it comes to the professional setting, I definitely think we should work as a country and work collectively and just continue the growth of the sport. Like the growth, the sport is still obviously very early. Like it's the growth is just going to keep going. Maybe in another 10 years, like another 10, 15, 20 years, it's going to be scary. It is actually quite scary how fast the sport's grown. Because before Conor McGregor came through in like 2013, people wouldn't even know what mixed martial arts was about, and now people are interested in it. Like even the amount of people that spoke to me and being like, I've just got into MMA this year or whatever, and it's incredible.
100%, and it's great to see as well. And to touch back on your most recent fight, obviously Cage Warriors 146 in Manchester, the crowd there, if you'd have just shown them that crowd, didn't tell them where the show was, they told them they were from Scotland, they'd assume the show was in Scotland with how much the crowd gets behind you. But how much does that help, seeing all that support that you had at that fight and seeing that support grow with every win or whatever result comes your way, seeing the support grow that's behind you?
No, definitely. I say this all the time, and it's because I truly mean it. It motivates me so much seeing that, because you think on that Cage Warriors card, right? You had MMA legends. You had, what did we have, 2 world title fights?
Yeah.
A welterweight, a middleweight title fight, and an interim welterweight title fight. You had former UFC fighters, and then you had Reece McEwan from Greenup making the most noise. Like, it's just incredible, to be honest, because see if you think what the sport has to do to get there. So for instance, either people have paid first and foremost, they pay for a ticket for the event, which is like costing them money. Then they've paid for their travel to get down to the event. They've either stayed afterwards or they've sacrificed their Sunday hungover because they've been drinking the whole day. For me, they've gave up their weekend and essentially based their month in the weeks leading up to that event. They've gave that up to come and watch me fight. So when I'm training and times are tough, training's hard, moments like that pop into my head, or even now when the fight's over with and I get to reflect on that adds an extra bit of motivation for me to continue the work and keep that momentum going, because like I said, it's extremely motivating, and I can't thank people from the bottom of my heart, because you've touched on it there, but there's people coming up to me in the gym and saying, "Oh, what a support you brought down to Manchester." Every interview after the fight, they were talking about the support, and I think it's I think it's only right that they get the recognition, because, like I said, the investments that they put in to just come down to my fight, family, friends, even the people that came up to me after the fight who I had no idea who they were, And they were like, great fight, great crowd, and that's a knock-on effect of the people who came down to watch me making so much noise.
Yeah, and obviously having that support still early on in your career as well, I'm sure it's a great feeling to have. And then while you're in the cage, but now looking at the landscape of the division, obviously cage race, it's very interesting in terms of the divisions. Obviously, you've got the names that are in the mix now, but then in 6 months' time, there could be another 2 or 3 fighters that all of a sudden quickly rise, and they're in there as well. But in terms of looking at the division's landscape at the moment, is there anyone that you look at that you want to face, or is your goal just getting the guy that'll get you closest to the title?
Honestly, for me, I don't really care. Like, I'm sure Cage Warriors and my manager Brian Bitter will deal with that in terms of like who they're going to bring to me next. I know that, like you said, like the sport's growing. Like the champ or whoever they think is the #1 contender might get a shot and a short notice fight in the UFC. So you really don't know how the landscape's going to be when it comes to March or April when I'm out next. But like I said, I do have my eye in the division, and I know who might be out there. I'm just ready for anyone, to be honest. I'm completely focused on myself, and I'm sure I'll face another top contender in my next fight. But like I said, you just don't know what's going to come around the corner. Like when I fought Sam Spencer, I never really knew anything about him, and then when I got offered him, I thought, right, okay, that's a tough fight. I asked for Kingsley Crawford. I wanted him because he made a statement over Aiden James. I thought, right, okay, wow, like Aiden James is legit, and he's just done that to him. I want to fight him. I want to prove, like I said, I'm in Cage Warriors because I think I'm the best fighter in Europe in my weight division, and I want to go and prove it. And that's why I asked for Kingsley Crawford. I was on him, my manager, like every week, is that fight confirmed yet? Is that fight confirmed? And then we got it. And then Adam Wilson just got offered to me, and he pulled out, and then I got offered the replacement, which I took. So again, whoever Ian comes to us and offers, I'm going to take it. But ultimately,
Yeah,
I'm just myself, to be honest.
yeah, 100%. And then the final thing for myself is, if people haven't heard the name Reece McEwan yet, or aren't too sure of the name, what's the one message that you would like to give to those sort of people that are going to come and come across your fights in the next year, in terms of what they can expect to see and where you see yourself at the end of next year?
Why haven't you heard of me? No, I'm kidding. No, I'm joking. If you've not heard of me, and obviously if you're watching this for the first time, I've got to just thank you for tuning in to watch the interview. And yeah, you can catch fights on UFC Fight Pass, YouTube, interviews on Facebook or whatever. Give me a follow on social media, and welcome to the journey.
100%. And that is everything from myself. Just want to take a moment to shout out your sponsors, anything like that, socials, obviously just feel free to go right ahead, buddy.
No, of course, yeah. Obviously, I just touched on that there, but thanks so much for everyone that's listened to the interview. Thanks to yourself for your time, and a massive shout out to all my sponsors. If you hit me up on, you can hit them all up on my website, reecemckewan.com. You can go and check not only which business sponsors me, which business backs me, but you can also go and visit their own websites, their own social media links, and I think that's a bit more personal, as opposed to me touching on every business, and maybe some businesses getting lost in my fast speech. You can go onto my website, reecemckewan.com. There's a section dedicated to my sponsors, and you can go check out the businesses that make my life possible.
100%. Well, I appreciate your time very much. It's always a pleasure speaking with yourself. Obviously, if you don't know the name, you're in big bother. It's over now. But obviously, 2023, I'm sure you're going to be hearing the name Reece McEwan a lot more as he continues his rise through the Cage Warriors promotion and his rise through MMA in general. Thank you very much for your time, buddy. Much appreciated.
Thank you so much. Thank you very much.
Make sure to subscribe to the LowKick MMA YouTube channel for all the latest news, event previews, and interviews with some of the biggest stars in MMA.